NEET MCH preparation for the MCH students, the surgeons who just want to have the MCH tag behind them, the surgeons in the making, the super specialists in the making. And over here, we will be discussing how to qualify the NEET MCH examinations. And I wish all the aspirants who are just willing to go into the examinations this year best of luck. But what is to be prepared, how it is to be prepared, what do you expect, what were the types of questions which were frequently asked. So a brief roundup which will just make us wiser as far as the MCS examinations are concerned. So this concise lecture I think would benefit you, and I would just want to have your undivided attention as far as the types of questions are asked. I would just take you through the roundabout of the questions. So question one: a patient with Carney-Stratsky syndrome usually has a combination of. So we are given the options. So basically is that what is Carney-Stratsky syndrome? So you have to remember that it is a combination of gastrointestinal stromal tumors and paraganglionoma. So the combination is GIST plus paraganglionoma. That is the basic fundamental crux of the question. So you will be given, the examiner will try to distract you with so many oncological entities like the Wilms tumor plus GIST, like the MTC, medullary thyroid carcinoma plus enchondromas, nephroblastoma plus medulloblastomas, just to distract you away from the main question. So the basic fundamental thing is that you have to know what this clinical entity is. The examiners have got this habit of asking a bit rarer entities, and the MCH and the DM aspirants are well advised to know the rarer entities. So just tumors you're already knowing about the stomach cancers, which they are specialized type, tyrosinase kinase activity high in these tumors, and they arise from the spinal cells, and what are the important mutations which are there, what is the role of tyrosine kinase inhibitors in there, the resistance to the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, some of them. But over here, this is something further, just plus an entity which is the syndromic entity which is in question over here. So that tests your ability of the fundamental knowledge. We know surgeons are just busy in the theaters. They don't have that much time to revise like the DM students, so they do not chase books. So surgeons, just to give you a brief idea, so it is how it goes, the questions which are asked. Which type of CAMS? And sometimes the student doesn't know what the CAMS means. So cerebrofacial arteriovenous metameric syndrome, a latest concept, involves Roman Kaplan usually. So you have got these CAMS. There are various types of CAMS, 1, 2, 3. And these cerebrofacial arteriovenous metameric syndromes, they are categorized on the basis of their presentation. CAM1, CAM2, CAM3. You have to remember what are the features of CAM1, what are the features of CAMS2, what are the features of CAMS3. So which is involved, what part is involved, what is the prosencephalon involved, why is the Roman Kaplan involved, and what are the important associations. So nasal, hypothalamic, optic, and pontine involvements differ in the CAMS. So to be very sure about, you have to just read CAMS from a very standard textbook that's important, Sabston, Schwartz, and sometimes some super specialty books. As far as MCH is concerned, we know it is the MCH head and neck surgery, MCH plastic surgery, MCH neurosurgery, endocrine surgery, surgical oncology, surgical gastroenterology, and sometimes questions are asked. I mean, the standard is a bit higher, and you have to be well aware about these important entities which are rare, which are latest, and this is a prototype of such a question. So CAMS3 would be the answer, which involves the Roman Kaplan, and it has got the involvement of the pons and cerebellum as far as this metameric syndrome is concerned. Now, GI, gastrointestinal hemangiomatosis, has a strong association with which entity except as far as the hemangiomas and the hemangiomatous concerns concerning the GIT are concerned, which may provide, present with profuse bleeding or maybe silent sometimes. You have to remember that GIT hemangiomatosis is associated with BRBN syndrome, blue rubber bleb nevus syndrome, Klippel-Trenaunay-Weber syndrome, Maffucci syndrome, diffuse neonatal hemangiomatosis, and Proteus syndrome. So DiGeorge syndrome is a different clinical entity. I will not go much into the manifestations of the DiGeorge syndrome, and because it is a, I mean to say, an important entity, pediatric entity, neonatal entity, which is characterized by a whole different types of features. But as far as the GIT hemangiomatosis is concerned, there are these important concerns. The I mean, say polyposis syndromes of the GIT, the hemangiomatous conditions of the GIT, I mean, say multiple endocrine neoplasia syndromes. They are very important conditions. The syndromic entities like the tuberous sclerosis, they are quite frequently on the examiner's mind. And you have to remember that GIT hemangiomatosis is a feature which is associated with so many syndromic entities. But over here, the D. George syndrome is the least possible entity. So remember other entities which are there. Now, I was mentioning some of the syndromic entities. Here is a question: polyglandular diseases. A patient presents with hypoparathyroidism and adrenal insufficiency has recurrent candidal infection. Most likely causes again Gordon, Sturcart's polyglandular 1, polyglandular 2 autoimmune syndromes. As far as this clinical condition is concerned, polyglandular A type 1 is usually seen with the manifestations of candidiasis, mucocutaneous candidal infection, hypoparathyroidism, and adrenal insufficiency. That is very important. There is this adrenal gland which lies on the top of the kidneys, the renal system, and we have got the adrenal insufficiency over there. And this is given the name as polyglandular autoimmune syndrome type 1. So this is very important. It's a polyendocrinopathy candidiasis ectodermal dystrophy syndrome. So you have to remember multiple eponym names of these syndromes. These are quite frequent on the examiner's mind, and the student should be well versed with these clinical entities. Now, a surgeon diagnosed a tumor in the abdominal wall, which turns out to be desmoid. All are features of desmoid except. So the examiner has given you the description of a tumor, and you have to know the pathological feature of the desmoid tumors, whether they are capsulated, whether they are common in males or females, whether they are hard or soft masses, whether they occur below the umbilicus or above the umbilicus, whether they are capsulated or fibrous or not. So these are basically encapsulated and non-fibrous. They are musculoepineurotic tumors which have to remember they are benign histologically and they are firm subcutaneous masses that grow slowly. And you have to remember all the features. My point over here is not to describe you cannot do MCH preparation in 10 minutes or 1 hour's time. It needs a constant, study from your time, constant concentration, consistency. But here, the types of questions which are asked. So to give you a brief idea, you have to know about the tumors, some important, whether their dominance is in males or females, what is the gross pathological feature, what is the gross microscopic feature, the regions which they are affected. So desmoid happens to be one tumor which is asked frequently as far as these things are concerned. Now, a 34-year-old male has colonic polyposis associated with desmoid tumors, epidermolysis, lipomas, osteomas. The inheritance pattern followed it. So you have to remember what this I was just telling you some time back, gastrointestinal polyposis syndromes, and there is this important condition, Gardner syndrome. There are those syndromes, Turcot syndrome. There is the FAP, there is the HNPCC. But over here, you have to remember once there are those osteomas, desmoid tumors, and epidermal, involvement. That is classic of Gardner syndrome, and it follows an autosomal dominant inheritance pattern. That's very, very important. It is not X-linked dominant, it is autosomal dominant. And the features of Gardner syndrome, desmoid tumors, epidermoid cysts, lipomas, osteomas, you have to remember that. What are the features of Turcots? What are the features of Gardner's? What are the features of HNPCC? What are the features of FAP and all those syndromes? You have to remember. Now, not a correct match about the genes and causation is. So you are given a set of clinical conditions, you have given the genetic anomalies, and you have to see the match, which is the correct match and which is not the correct match. As far as P53 is concerned, you know it is Lee-Froman syndrome. As far as melanoma is concerned, you know that melanomas are characterized by various important, chromosomal and genetic levels, and you have to know the genes which are involved in melanoma. Over here is a correct combination: MSN2 hereditary non-polyposis cancer syndrome associated with MSN2, and the incorrect part is the APC with multiple endocrine neoplasia. So you have to remember not only these things. I have given a list of patches involved in nevoid basal cell carcinoma syndrome, MSN2 and hereditary non-polyposis carcinoma, BRCA1 and BRCA2. You have to remember APC. You have to remember retinoblastoma. You have to remember P53 leaf hormones and melanomas. What are the importance? So over here, it is not a correct match, APC and multiple endocrine neoplasia. So that is very, very important. So these genetic associations, they tend to be asked by the examiners, and you have to be very vigilant about questions of this sorts. Now, signet ring carcinomas of stomach is usually associated with. So this is from an immunological perspective, the immunoreactivity against what cytokeratin 20, CDX2, MUC2. So you have to remember, signet cell carcinomas are seen in stomach, small bowel, colon carcinoma, and are composed of mucin producing or mucus producing tumor cells. Mucus producing tumor cells, which are a feature of signet ring cell carcinomas. So you have to remember what they are immunoreactive to, and you have to remember the genetics again. So based on the immunoflow cytometry, the immunogenicity against what antigens, you have to remember. So strong immunoreactivity against cytokeratin 20, CDX2, and MUC2. So that is very classic of signet ring cell carcinoma. So you are asked under certain conditions the subtypes of the cancers and their immunoreactivity as well. So apart from that, sometimes you are given questions on image-based parts. I will not go to the details. So this is an image over here. You may give a clinical scenario, and you have to recognize. Basically, this is an image, and you have to remember that you can see over here. There is this dilatation of the vessel wall, which is a I would say abdominal aorta, and there's this abdominal aneurysm. So coming to these are some types of questions are image-based, very frequently common in NEET PG, but not that much in NEET DM and MCH. But you are getting a small chunk of questions on image based. So you have got this to recognize. So this is a aortic aneurysm, and you have to remember the dilatation to pick up, smart enough to pick up the things which exist at this point of time. In a similar manner over here, you have to identify the things. So this, what this is, you can see that this is a gastric mass, a well-established gastric mass over here. Your ability to recognize CTs, MRIs, PET scans, ultrasounds, and that is sometimes tested. So a well-established gastric mass over here. So in here, a few weeks old baby, it is a what type of a swelling? So you can see the sacrococcygeal teratoma over here. So it is a teratoma. It is not an ovarian teratoma. It's a teratoma, sacrococcygeal. It is not a leiomyoma. It's not a bladder mass. Ability of you to recognize the sacrum, then the mass behind the sacrum, sacrococcygeal teratoma, and that's it. And the neonate, and what would be the clinical condition which would be there. And over here, you can see there is the renal image, splenic injury, renal disruption, liver rupture, gallbladder injury. So there is the renal disruption which you can quite pick up very easily from this scan. So the ability of a student to arrive at the diagnosis just by looking at the films, that is also tested as a part of MCH examinations. So this is something I would just like to mention, the types of questions you are asked. It might have made you a bit wiser. What is the standard? What are the options like asked? What are the questions which are asked? And I hope that this will help you. This is the general surgery specialty book, Platinum Pearls, in covering all the topics, the surgical oncology, the plastic surgery, the neurosurgery, the surgical gastroenterology, all the aspects, endocrine surgery, and the plastic surgery I mentioned, general surgery as well, image-based surgery, common concepts, anatomical surgery. So that is how we just go about preparing for MCH. I wish you best of luck in your preparation, and thanks a lot.